Hello everyone, and welcome back to DMG. Recently I've looked at a lot of digital cameras on this channel. Today I have something a little bit older for you. This is HP's first camera. It's just called the HP PhotoSmart. Later they would be branded with model numbers, but this is just the PhotoSmart. This came out in 1997, but it's actually a rebrand of an even earlier Minolta camera from 1995. So today we're going to be taking a look at this extremely early artifact of digital photography. We're going to look at the photos it produces, and yeah, this is just a really cool piece of hardware. As always, we're going to start going around the sides. So the front of it is pretty bare. Flash, viewfinder, that is a tiny light that flashes when the auto self-timer is activated to let you know it's about to take a photo. On this side is your power and serial ports for data and for data transfer. And finally, it's worth pointing out where the lens says 37mm threads, so that 37mm lens extensions can fit on things like UV filters or telephoto lenses, since this has no zoom capability, whether digital or mechanical, of its own. And finally, under this white window are some of the sensors that help it with autofocus, because this actually does have autofocus capabilities. The back is extremely bland compared to modern digital cameras. It looks more like a film camera. You just have 5 buttons. Delete the previous photo if you hold it down. Quality adjustment. Flash on and off, EV, exposure compensation, and self-timer on and off. And I'm going to show you what this little screen does. So, putting some batteries in, that little screen turns on. Shows you batteries on one side, a film icon to tell you how many photos are stored in the card currently, and this to indicate how many photos you can still take. Now, to change that quality setting, I can either get 14 low quality, 7 high quality, and 1 super high quality. Let's take a super high quality picture right now. So, I heard the shutter, I heard the autofocus, and now it's saving to the card, and this will take quite a while. Speaking of that card, it's under this door. And this is an absolutely fascinating card. Now, this may look like compact flash, but it's actually a bit of a smaller card in both dimensions. In fact, in all three, it's a little thinner as well. But the big difference is that the pins aren't on the end like they are with compact flash. They're on the bottom. This is a media format that was seldom used, competing with compact flash, but not very effectively. This is the Intel miniature flash card. Its big technological difference from compact flash is that instead of using flash memory, it uses static RAM, a type of random access memory that does not need constant power to keep its data. SRAM at this time was cheaper in high capacities such as 2 megabytes. And I can testify firsthand that the data longevity of these cards is not affected in any meaningful way by its use of RAM rather than flash memory, because this card actually had photos from the 90s on it when I got this camera, and clearly this camera has not been used in a very long time. So these will hold photos for 20 plus years without power. But it does have some very, very nice HP PhotoSmart branding on it. Now, that's about all I can show you of the camera. On its own, it does very little. It is the most basic a digital camera could possibly be, the most basic and the most functional. It takes pictures, and then you transfer them to a computer for further tinkering, I suppose. So that is where we shall look next. We're going to look at what the computer software for this camera is like. Alright, our computer is booting up here. So we'll plug in our serial cable with our little adapter to convert it to the standard 9 pins and connect our camera up. So the serial cable for the camera just plugs right into the side, and when you power on the camera, it shows a small PC logo there in the corner, little computer logo, and from now on, this is where all the magic is going to be happening on our wonderful compact laptop here. So I was unable to find HP branded software. However, the Konica QEZ utility works just fine because this is the same camera hardware. It's just under the HP name rather than the Minolta or Konica name. I keep saying Minolta because Konica is the parent company of Minolta. So under File, we're going to make sure our bitrate is... Okay, good. So our baud rate is high enough. And you really do want a high baud rate for serial transfers if you've never done this before, believe me. So the computer utility allows you to do a couple things that you can't do on the camera itself, such as set the clock and format the miniature card. Formatting the card, it prompts you like 7 times if you actually want to do that. But another fascinating thing the computer can do is you can remotely take a picture that immediately transfers over serial, or you can set up a time lapse through the computer. It's entirely controlled by the computer. Instead of transferring the photos to the miniature card, it sends them back over serial. So that's awesome. So you can choose your image quality, whether or not the flash is on, exposure compensation, and then the interval for the time lapse. And yeah, then you can just choose where it saves the photos. We'll save them to our storage disk, and boom. So this camera here just took a picture and it'll transfer that over serial. And yep, there it goes. So that's a really uninteresting picture of my kitchen. I have some better time-lapse photos from this camera that I will be showing you later. And because this is just a Twain driver for the camera, that means you can also import pictures from this into other utilities. Like Epson's software can also read pictures from this camera, for instance. But we're going to power this back on and see what pictures are in the camera. Open Camera shows you files that are currently stored, and then you can just drop those onto your computer, as is standard for image transfer software. So it shows you the quality level, the date taken, and of course it loads all of the pictures, like all of the data about the pictures, and then it loads the thumbnails themselves if you click thumbnail. So again, because it's serial transfer, it's not particularly fast, so there's our picture. So we can select all and just save those to F, might as well. So while those are transferring, I'll tell you a little bit more about the camera hardware itself. By the way, this little orange light is on while either the flash card or the serial bus is performing an operation. So a little bit more about the hardware itself. I've opened this up, and there's a whole lot more in here than I expected. There is a whole lot inside this camera. It's crazy. And I'll put some pictures on screen for you to gaze upon. But it does have autofocus, and it's somewhat macro capable. Sometimes its macro shots work, so it has all the motors for autofocus down in there. It has an adorable, tiny little CCD with a native resolution of 640 by 480, that's VGA resolution, and a ton of chips. It's not all streamlined into one solution like modern digital cameras are, where it's pretty much just one chip that does, like, you know, the CPU work and the image processing and all that. It has completely separate chips for every step of the pipeline. We can go ahead and open my computer and look at a couple of those. Now, this image transfer utility really slows down the CPU, as you can see by how slow my Office toolbar is scrolling back and how slowly all of this is loading. Now, this is it's not a super fast processor. This is an AMD K6 at 380 megahertz paired with 128 megabytes of RAM. So it's not a very fast processor, but this is still like totally bringing it to its knees. Like, I've never seen this computer hammered like when it is transferring pictures through this Konica QEZ utility. And there we go. There's the CPU fan turning on. It's nice and warm, nice and toasty. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures on this computer, just, so you can see what it looks like through the utility. And then I'll go and screen record and show you these pictures in higher quality. Emphasis on higher quality, because again, this is a 640 by 480 camera. It looks very basic, and its images manage to look nearly as good as the camera on my modern Android phone. But jokes aside, like any digital camera of this era, it has a lot of shortcomings. But it's really neat to look back and see what it was like to use the first generation of consumer digital cameras. And we're almost done with our transfer, 8 out of 9. This, I don't like USB. I have a lot of problems with USB. But using serial really makes me thankful that faster interfaces are around. Now, failed on the last. Okay, so we're going to go back up to our camera menu and format our card. Here's our first warning, second warning, and third warning. So this is an Epson software, but if we scale it up to 100%, I think that's, dog. So that's just an example of a transferred picture. And now we're going to go look at some more photos from this. There we go. So here are some of the photos that I've taken. Again, these are 640 by 480 native resolution, and I'll pull up some more specifications about these photos. So it lists it as the HP PhotoSmart digital camera. But yes, here are some of the pictures we're looking at. Oh, here's one of the pictures that came on the card that I had. So, like, for example, it's clear enough to read that this says computer paper. This is some Christmas a long time ago. Oh, there's its image utility, taking a picture of its own utility, although it's too blurry to actually read any text. More photos from Christmas long ago. Someone got a whole lot of presents. Dog. And, at its native resolution, it looks fine. But if you scale it all the way up to this 1080p that you're looking at right now, you can see JPEG dithering around the edges of objects. Like, the colors are a little wonky, particularly here. And it doesn't capture detail nearly as well as later cameras, because again, how many megapixels is 640 by 480? That is 0.307 megapixels that we're working with here. And of course, megapixels aren't all that matter, but in this case, they really are. And more dog. So something you'll notice is a lot of these photos are very blue, particularly the indoor photos. So its white balance is very strange. It doesn't know what to do with white balance. I feel like it's always, and I don't think the white balance is fixed, because again, under the same lighting, you could have two photos that look pretty different in terms of color temperature. So I think it's just really horrible at gauging white balance. Again, I'm not, blaming this camera. It did the best it could in, 95. Okay, here are some boxes, and these were shot at pretty close range. You can read some things. That says RDC 5300, PhotoSmart 8881, can kind of make out 945, Coolpix 990. You can see the HP logo there, Quadro box. So, it in decent enough conditions, 640 by 480 sensor is still able to pick up an acceptable amount of detail. This is a snow scene that, again, came on the memory card of the camera. Okay, this one actually looks really good. This one was on the memory card of the camera, and the stars perfectly aligned and produced a solid photo with this old camera. The detail is great. You can make out the falling snow. You can make out the icicles around the edge of this table. And it's because of this red brick. It's because of the contrast of the snow on the brick. But it looks really good for a 640 by 480 sensor. This is a 30-year-old digital camera that you're looking at right here. Now here's my favorite photo that I've taken on it. There's some serious chromatic aberration because this building has slats up in this section, and a blend of the JPEG compression and ancient CCD sensor just didn't play nice. You can also see like compression artifacts and dithering on this corner of the photo that actually make it look like a film camera, like aged, past its expiration date film. The patches of sunlight here in the front were actually picked up pretty well, although of course the background is too bright. But this is a pretty good looking photo. Yes, okay, so here, these were taken in the same room, probably 15 seconds apart. This one has slightly warmer than normal color tone, and this one is purple. It's like deep blue. So the color temperature is just a problem that this camera cannot solve. This is another pretty solid photo. So of course it's washed out by the sky. The CCD sensor in here is very small, so inherently small CCD sensors can't pick up contrast as well as larger ones can. Plus its age doesn't help either. But this is a decently detailed photo. It's well framed, it's well shot, and the camera conveyed it pretty well. This is another pretty solid one. And, can't make out any detail in the sky, but the colors are pretty good. Of course, edges of objects here just blend together because your resolution is too low for them to be made out clearly. And you get those same funky lines, those compression artifacts. But again, for a first generation consumer digital camera, for 640 by 480, this isn't half bad. I think this was taken off of that bridge, and this is another okay one. You can sort of make out leaves by the side of the road. So more under this same lighting, and this lighting played nicely with the camera. And that's what you have to hope for with these old digital cameras. You just have to get lucky. So for whatever reason, the right side is just red here. Like it starts about right here, and then it's just red. So another funky color balance thing that this camera has. That's decent macro. It's not like super close up, but this is close enough range to call macro. It's blue to the point of it looking purple, as you can see in the background here. But the detail on the flowers is somewhat preserved. Okay, so here clearly it adjusted its shutter speed and exposure for the sky. And I may have actually dialed back the exposure compensation as well too. So you get that similar red artifact, and that is a hallmark of early CCD sensors. Sometimes you would get these bands of color above and below bright sources of light. But the contrast isn't bad for this camera, and also the detail of the leaves is pretty solid. I don't know what this is. I think that's a cat. I found some sort of critter at work. Also, there's just this big splotch. Funky looking stuff. And then here is a time-lapse setup with this camera. So, laptop plugged into the power brick to produce a time-lapse such as this. You know, to photograph some hummingbirds with the Konica QEZ/HP PhotoSmart. And of course the detail here on the birds is not nearly as well conveyed as the PhotoSmart C500, which I did most of my hummingbird photography on. But, you know, you can tell what it is, you can tell what's going on. I have some other time lapses here, and I think these are just hold button down time lapses. Oh right, that's the one where I didn't adjust the exposure to be at a fixed point. They're all like this, actually. So yes, a big problem with the QEZ/HP PhotoSmart is that in time-lapse mode you can't set it to a fixed exposure. So you get flickering like this as the camera decides shot to shot how bright it should be. But that's the end of the photos that I have from the QEZ/HP PhotoSmart, the first HP PhotoSmart and one of the first consumer digital cameras. So I hope this was interesting. I hope it was eye-opening to see the software and the photos and also the hardware itself of the camera. I hope that was interesting. But that wraps it up for this video. So thank you so much for watching. I have a lot of other digital camera content on this channel if you're interested, so go check that out. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I hope to see you again